All right, welcome back. The title for this mini lecture is World War I and the American Homefront. And we're going to talk about 5 things that you should know about what life was like in the U.S. during that time. First would be something called the CPI, or Committee of Public Information. This was an organization that was run by a man named George Creel, and it was created in early 1917 with the mission being to spread the message that President Wilson wanted about the objectives that America sought during the First World War. Now, Creel and his agents worked with state governments and agencies to coordinate that message along a variety of media platforms that the public would have been using in 1917 and 1918, meaning there would have been songs, there would have been posters, there would have been a use of newspapers, there would be a use of public speakers. There was a bureau of this known as the 4-Minute Men, whose job it was to get out and to, again, give short 4-minute messages about the nature of the war from the American side. There would also be expositions where the public would be encouraged to come and to learn about the war, to see captured battlefield relics, and to learn how to do things like canned food even though we're rationing and those kinds of things. Now, another part of the CPI, though, of course, was the kind of message that they're getting out is certainly gendered, it's racialized, and it's curated to reflect the mission of what America is seeking at the time. Meaning, obviously, there's going to be some censorship that's a part of this, too. Secondly, the APL. Now, this stands for the American Protective League. This was an offshoot, an auxiliary of the Justice Department, and it operated in 1917 and 1918. There were about 250,000 members, and it originated in Illinois and Chicago, again in 1917. The APL saw itself as an organization of individuals that wanted to make sure that Americans were following the message that the CPI was giving them, that they were signing up for the selective service, that they were joining the military, that they were not hoarding, that they were following the ration guidelines, that they were being properly patriotic. And so they would encourage people to do so through voluntary, but in other cases through rather, in some cases, violent means or means that would question the liberties and First Amendment rights of many individuals. So the APL was noted for what were called slacker raids, where they would stop men in the streets and see whether or not they were registered for the selective service, for the draft, and they would detain them, this kind of thing. Third would be war production. So when the United States went to war in 1917, portions of the American economy had already been shifted to meet the needs of European allies, from that period. And so some of that production would also have to shift to support the Americans from 1917 to 1918. There was a bit of rationing that was instituted, and federal and state agencies encouraged Americans to sort of do their part by foregoing certain foods and this kind of thing in order to make sure that the production needs were being met for the military. Fourthly would be anti-Germanism. Really, when the war gets going, there's a pretty strong backlash against anyone who is even thought as being of German descent or German ancestry, if there was a clear accent in your speaking. And this lent itself to real violence in many cases towards individuals, including a man by the name of Robert Prager in Collinsville, Illinois, who is murdered for being of German ancestry. Now, lastly, the Spanish flu. Now, this begins in 1917, 1918, and into 1919. But in late fall 1918, this particular wave of the Spanish flu, again, it didn't come from Spain, was profoundly deadly and killed over 600,000 Americans. And globally, the flu killed nearly 50 to 100 million people, although scholars still debate the number on that. And again, the strains of the flu had originated partly in Kansas and in a few other locations, but it was a deadly pandemic the likes of which we had not ever seen for centuries before. Thanks so much.